And we're live. Merry Christmas and welcome to CAD Live. It's episode 46, I think. And today we are talking about taking the tomato pill. Yes, that's right. Taking the tomato pill. But first of all, I just want to welcome you to the stream. If you're live on the stream, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you. Winston Wolf is here already. Good to see you, man. Thanks for showing up. Hang on a second. We've also got Mr. Ubik in the house as well, asking what's going on with the tomato meme. So we'll get into that in a second. And also, thank you very much if you are tuned into this at a later date on the replay. I appreciate you massively. I know everyone can't make these things live because some of you, unlike me, have actually got a job. So, you know, you can't make it if you're in the UK and it's daytime or whatever, or the morning in the States. But listen, thanks ever so much for tuning in. And let's get rid of those ridiculous glasses. So listen, you know, you can tell it's the end of the year. You can tell I'm busy with the entrance to CAD Academy, which is still live, by the way. So if you still want to join CAD Academy, you can. The price is now $597, but for that you get the 10 hours worth of content about charisma and dating skills. You get access to the 10 webinars, live webinars with me, week commencing the 14th. You get all of that additional video content, personalized attention, plus the Telegram group, Facebook group, etc. So if you want to join that, we will be sticking the link down below. And I will try and stick it in the chat actually during the show. But that said, you can tell it's the end of the year and you can tell I'm really busy because I'm not even thinking about SEO or anything. I'm putting up just ridiculous titles now. Take the tomato pill. It's not really going to pull in many new viewers, let's face it, but whatever. You know, it's Christmas. It's a bit of a laugh. There we go. But I'm not really going to be talking about tomatoes today or growing tomatoes, although apparently there are 20 different types of tomatoes, which is a fact that I didn't know until last week. And I'm very glad now to have learned that fact. But we're actually going to be talking about taking, I suppose, what you call the red pill, because let's face it, tomato, they're red. It's kind of like a metaphor for the red pill, if you like. And so what I kind of wanted to talk about today was how you came to a greater understanding of the dating marketplace and how you came to realize that maybe things weren't as you thought they were back when you were a young, innocent, naive youngster who was watching all of those 80s movies and getting really excited and thinking, oh my God, I'm just going to meet my beautiful princess and then it's all going to be amazing. And then you realized things were perhaps a little bit different than that. And do you like this shirt, by the way? Look at this. Banter clause. Banter clause. Do you see that? Banter clause is coming to town. I don't know whether that term is used in the United States quite as much as it is here. In the United Kingdom, we use the term banter, and it means sort of like if you've got good chat, you know, if you've got chat is another term that we use a lot actually, but it basically means if you've got the gift of the gab, if you've got the ability to speak and be charming and be funny and bloody blah. And obviously that's what this show's all about, right? So this is entirely relevant. So yeah, I mean, what I really actually want to talk about today is, I suppose, my awareness about some of the realities of the dating marketplace and how it came about for me. But in the meantime, as always, please do put your questions into the chat. Please put your comments into the chat, thoughts, observations, anything else, tomato growing recipes, you know, whatever it is, whack it into the chat and we will deal with it. You know, if you've got a sort of a newfangled way to grow ripe tomatoes that taste delicious, then share it with us and we can discuss that throughout the show. Alternatively, if you've got issues with dating and maybe day game or even night game or online game, I mean, let's face it, guys, we're kind of in the online game space at the moment, aren't we? What with all these lockdowns and everything. So whack those into the chat and we will seek to deal with them as the episode goes on. But I suppose this whole thing about red pill, I mean, it's not even a term that I particularly like to use, really, because the problem with everything in this space is that it gets somewhat tainted by the terminology and the fact that some people will take that terminology and they will use it to their own ends. And of course, what we see now is that this term red pill, which as far as I'm concerned, always just used to refer to the dating marketplace, to the sexual marketplace, to intergender dynamics, etc., now applies to almost everything. You know, it applies in so many different spaces. It's like taking the red pill about money, taking the red pill about crypto, taking the red pill about politics, taking the red pill about the lizard people who control us all and want to put microchips into us and all of that stuff. You know, all of this nonsense, it's referred to as being red pill. And to be frank, I've got very little time for a lot of that stuff. It's just, I prefer to live in reality. And certainly I prefer not to go down an internet rabbit hole, which is just not really going to serve me on having a better life, because all I'm really interested in at the end of the day is having a better life for me and for the people who are close to me. I'm not really interested in all of this other stuff that I can't affect anyway. So I try not to really use the term red pill so much, and indeed the term manosphere as well, because that's become tainted also by a bunch of idiots who have an agenda that differs very distinctly from mine. So I don't consider myself part of either of those things, really. Although, of course, one's audience may fall into those camps, because if you're talking about dating and you're talking about lifestyle and how to live your life as a guy in 2020 going into 2021, then of course there's going to be overlap with those spaces. But I don't regard myself as being part of them in the same way that I don't regard myself as being a dating coach or a PUA or any other early 2000s epithet that you might seek to apply to me. I am a writer and I'm a social commentator, and I do the odd course here and there. I've got CAD Academy open at the moment, but I may not continue to run CAD Academy into next year. I'm looking now ahead to next year. I'm thinking about my plans. And to be honest, I think that my dating coaching, if you like, how long I will continue that is open to question. I certainly don't intend to continue it forever. All right. And to be honest, the main dating coaching, if you call it coaching, that I do, because it's a group coaching program in CAD Academy, is through that program. And whether I continue that into next year or not, I'm uncertain at the moment. So if you do want to take advantage of that, if you do want to come into those webinars and have that group dynamic and that personal attention from me and the other guys that we bring in, you know, John MLD and Myron, and lots of surprises just before Christmas, going into the holidays, then now is the time to sign up. Because as I say, I don't know yet about Q1 next year, whether we'll be relaunching or not. I may go in an entirely different direction. So if you want help in ramping up your dating life, as hopefully we start to emerge from this nightmare of 2020 in the new year, then now is the time. So do sign up. I will grab the link and whack it into the old chat. Here we go. Here's the link. So you can sign up. But anyway, so all of that being said, this stuff about taking the red pill, what happened as far as I'm concerned? Well, like I've said before, I mean, I obviously read The Rational Male. I read the Rational Male blog. So all right, let's take a step back. So I got into dating techniques and I got into reading about how to be better at dating and all that kind of stuff. And that happened in my late 20s or about the age of 30, when I was going through a bit of a dry spell and I wanted to take control of my dating life. And so I read the game, and then I read some other stuff and got into the blogs and the YouTube channels and all the rest of it. And then I started going out and practicing the stuff in London. And then I got a girlfriend and I dropped out of the scene for a while. So if you want to join Charisma and Dating Academy, that is the link. It's in the chat. Click now or forever hold your peace. I got a girlfriend. I dropped out of the scene for a while. Then almost immediately afterwards, I got another girlfriend and stayed out of the scene. I mean, I was lurking. I was looking at things, you know, a little bit online, but I wasn't actively really taking part. And then I split up with that second girl. And then, I'm like, okay, well, I'm at a loose end now. I want to get back into the dating market. Let's get back into the scene. And when I got back into the scene and started to really up my presence online again, reading about this stuff, watching the videos, etc., by that point, the so-called red pill, and in particular the work of Rollo Tomassi and also Chateau Artiste, had become very prominent. And there'd been this sort of crossover between the guys who were just into the dating stuff, who were into like the day game stuff or whatever, and then this other stuff, which was more about the wider dynamics, almost like the sociology behind it. And so I started then to read people like the Rational Male, like Rollo Tomassi, as well as Artiste, who's, as I've said before, whose dating stuff is fantastic and whose political stuff is absolutely the dregs of the internet. But his dating stuff was good and interesting and punchy, well written. I like that. So I got into that. And of course, a lot of the comments on that site were really good as well. If anybody remembers that guy called Yar Really, who was awesome in terms of his comments and his game knowledge. So yeah, and I became aware that there was this other side to it. There was this, people were dissecting how the dating marketplace worked, and they were showing the dynamics that laid underneath it, let's say. And all of that stuff was fascinating. But for me, it was kind of like, as I hear many people describe their first exposure to the work of Rollo, was that he was saying things that they recognized, but perhaps hadn't been able to articulate or hadn't articulated for themselves prior to reading his stuff. So it wasn't that I read his stuff and it was like, oh my God, this is just a bolt from the blue. I never thought like this before. Because actually I had thought like that before. It was just that I hadn't put it into words and I hadn't expressed it in such an eloquent way as he does. And remember, Rollo Tomassi would always talk about joining the dots. He never claimed to have invented all of it, but he's certainly, to my mind, the person who is the best at stringing it all together and creating a coherent narrative, a coherent whole out of all of that disparate information that was based on these viewpoints of people who are out doing game and doing pickup and whatever, and other thinkers. He certainly crystallized it in a form that was digestible, intelligent, thoughtful, etc., etc. Okay. However, was that where I got my awareness from? Well, not really, no. Because, as I've said, my childhood, my growing up, wasn't the most harmonious in this regard. And what happened was basically I was a child of divorce. So my parents divorced when I was 7 years old. And my mother had custody of me for a period of time, and my dad went away. And obviously that's very traumatic for a young kid to his father is suddenly taken out of the picture. My mother at the time was experiencing some difficulties herself in her own personal life with her own, mental state and depression and so on and so forth. So obviously that impacted as well. And then after several other events, my father then went to court to get custody of myself and my sister. And then we were taken into custody by my father. So we were effectively taken away from my mother, taken into custody by my father. And my father, by this time, had started a new relationship with another woman who would then go on to be my stepmother. Okay. And so we were brought into this new family. My stepmother had another daughter. So suddenly I had this new sister who was actually my cousin, which I'll explain another time. But, I had this new sister. And so myself and my sister were brought into this new family setup, if you like, with this new sister of ours and this new stepmother. And it was a very mixed up time. It was, I don't want to say it was all bad because that would be misrepresenting it. But my stepmother also had issues that she had to deal with in terms of her moods, in terms of, perhaps she was suffering from depression. Perhaps there were other issues involved, but certainly she was a very volatile character. And it led to a family situation, a domestic situation that was very difficult and very challenging at times over the next few years. So I guess we're talking between, and my memory fails a little bit here, but from about the age of 8 or 9, I think, through to obviously when you leave home, which is about, what time is it? 18. Yeah, you leave home to go to university. That period of time was punctuated by a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, a lot of difficult things happening. And so for me, it was kind of the case that I had seen my father's first marriage fall apart, not work, and him divorcing my mother. And then I was brought in to this new marriage that my father was embarked upon with this woman. And I got then a ringside seat to observe how that went down. And not only was she challenging as far as myself and my sister were concerned, and actually my stepsister as well. I mean, she was a difficult woman at times. She had, as I say, her own issues to deal with her perhaps mental health, and maybe there were some other things involved. And so I got to see, and also the way that she was with my father as well. Now, my father, I think in the end, was, how can I put this? I think my father became henpecked by her, as they say, and perhaps didn't stand up to her to the degree that you might then argue that he should have done. Okay? And so I got to see firsthand the realities of what marriage can be like. And also as well, it's probably worth pointing out that I was born in the 70s. I was growing up in the 80s. Okay. And at that point, this was when no-fault divorce had really been brought in and kind of normalized in British society and also in the United States as well. And so divorce had been made a lot easier, and divorce was now becoming much more commonplace at that time. And so I suppose myself and our family, we were one of the first of this wave of kids who would be brought up in what they then called broken homes, or for a while a single parent home, and et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, there never really was that fantasy about, oh, the family is this safety haven and it's all amazing. I mean, look at this idiot here. Look at this idiot here. I'm telling a really serious story, and this idiot who always comes on and talks about sunglasses is like, did somebody steal your cheap sunglasses? I mean, this is the level of mentality of these haters. This is the mentality of the kinds of idiots that will attack a channel like this and other channels in this space, because these people have got nothing else to do except just chuck stupid hate and immature jibes at people. They can't engage with anything more emotional or more serious or deeper than stupid insults. And this is why that whole space is such a waste of time. But anyway, Andrew says, I'm glad that you didn't go black pill after all of that. And well, to some extent I did, because as I've said, I've had my own black pill period. I was, as a young man, as somebody who was growing up as a teenager up to about 18, I was pretty black pill in my outlook. And was that affected by my childhood? Yeah, probably. But the fundamental thing is, I mean, regardless of the color of the pills, regardless of if it was black pill or tomato pill or whatever, the truth of the matter is that I never really had that starry-eyed sense of, oh my God, I'll just meet a high quality woman and it's all going to be great. I never really thought that, because I'd observed, as I said, for my father, I'd observed these two situations where things had gone pear-shaped for him. And so I was aware of the pitfalls, and I was aware of the pretty lies, I suppose, about marriage, about family, about this structure. And I was very aware of the gap between what society was telling us about how a family should be, how a marriage should be, how beautiful and perfect and wonderful it is. And look now, if you're in the UK, probably in other countries as well, we've got all the Christmas adverts on the TV, and look at the way that family is depicted. Look at the way that homes are depicted. Look at the way that marriages are depicted on television, right? It's very, very stylized. It's very sanitized. And it's made to look really, really nice and really nurturing and warm and all of those things. And perhaps for some people it is. But for many of us, it wasn't like that at all. And actually, I was talking to Rich Cooper last night on his channel, and he was talking about monogamy. And he says in his book, which you should get, it's a really good book, by the way, The Unplugged Alpha, that human beings are not very good at monogamy. We may aspire to it sometimes. But we are not very good at it, okay? And what that manifests itself as is a difficult time, particularly for children who are brought into relationships, maybe unplanned, or when one of the parents then decides, actually, I've kind of had enough of this, and decides to go off somewhere. Incredibly damaging for children in that situation. And listen, I'm not going to be playing the tiny violin here, but I was in some way a victim of that, as was my sister and my other. I have another two sisters. I have my stepsister and also a further sister who was the daughter of my father and my stepmother. And all of us in some way have suffered as a result of that family dynamic. So when you see these adverts, when you see the way that this stuff is portrayed on television, you can see there's a very clear gap between what's being put out there for public consumption and the way things actually are. And you see this idiots come back again. Your cheap taste can be seen in 80s style Miami Vice inspired logo. Yuck. I mean, I can't even be bothered to block this guy. I'm just going to leave him here because this is the kind of mentality that we have to deal with from these haters. This is the kind of thing they can't engage even in a serious conversation, because it's not like I'm coming on here and doing a wacky show about, tomatoes or throwing pot shots at somebody or anything like that. Actually, I'm talking about something that's quite serious, that really affects the fundamental dynamics of the way that we relate to one another. And you get people like this who have nothing else to give. They've literally got nothing else except throwing in stupid insults. And that really is the mentality of a lot of people on that side of the fence here. Anyway, so, I never had that sense that family or marriage or relationships were this beautiful salvation. I never had this sense that they were this kind of safety haven that you would reach and that you would find, and then you would be able to cling on to, and it would all be safe and wonderful. I never had that sense. Okay. So in that regard, my red pill awareness, if you like, was put into me, was seeded, let's say, at a very early age. However, that's not to say that I didn't relapse. And I think that media has a lot to play here, has a large part to play here in this. Okay. I think that actually the films that we are shown, the societal conditioning, the media, all of these things, I think that these things do actually play a big role in the way that we perceive world and the way that we perceive relationships. So Loft Trader says cheap shades are good when you're in the sun, so I don't understand the problem. Well, the shades that I normally wear are Ray-Bans, and they cost about £200. So they're not, I'm not saying they're hugely expensive, but they're not really cheap either. These were cheap though. But they're not sunglasses. They're just like, whatever. So anyway, why are we talking about sunglasses? It's ridiculous. So I did nevertheless fall into the way of thinking that, oh my God, if I just meet this one special girl, then she will look after me, in spite of what I'd seen with my parents. And this is really, I think, one of the tricks that the mind can play. It's almost like when you talk about addiction, right? And this idea about insanity. So in circles where they talk about addiction, they will repeat this idea that insanity is repeating the same mistakes over and over again and expecting a different result, because the addict does exactly that. The addict, of alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, will take another hit, and he'll get some terrible consequences and maybe have a horrible come down. And then he will the next day wake up and think, oh, damn, I'm never going to do it again. I'm never going to do it again. And then the evening comes, he's like, I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to do it again. And it's like, oh, just one more time. And then he does it again. And that's what addiction is. Okay. It's that repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And I think that we are all addicted to dopamine. We're all addicted to that feeling of being loved. That feeling of, I just want somebody to protect me. And part of what's being in a relationship is not actually having to deal with yourself, not actually having to deal with where you are in your life, you're standing in the world. I've certainly done this. I've certainly been in relationships with women where I'm using that relationship in a sense to shield myself from the bigger questions about my life, right? I'm shielding myself from thinking, okay, well, actually, am I doing the work that I really want to be doing? Am I putting out the content I really want to be putting out? Am I, living life as I really want to live it, given that we're all here for a pretty short length of time, a few decades at most, right, as a productive adult. So, but you can get into that relationship and being loved and being nurtured, it's like a drug, because it takes away any or a lot of pain that you might feel about other areas of your life. It takes it away. And this is, I think, why we are so drawn to relationships and so drawn to women. And you know how we get guys who talk about women who, I just want someone to look after me. That sense of, I'm looking for a mother figure. I mean, none of us want to admit to that, but there's an element of that in relationships for guys. And we're using the relationship to take us away from ourselves. And so I think from my childhood, although I'd seen to some degree the truth, or one of the truths about how relationships can be and how marriage and families can be, on the other side of it, I was craving somebody to look after me. I was craving a sense of like, I just want to be nurtured. I just want someone to make me feel all right. And so then when you're hit with all of those 80s high school movies where the jock gets the girl for a while, but then she sees the nerd and she recognizes the nerd's amazing inequalities and decides actually she wants to get with him, I lapped all that stuff up because I wanted to believe that could be an outcome for me. I wanted to believe that there was some happiness. And what I didn't realize when I was young, and what it took me a long time to learn, was that it's the cliche, but you're not going to be made happy by somebody else. You're not going to be made happy by that person out there, that external person or thing or substance. That stuff is not going to make you happy. You have to find it in yourself. But at the time, I didn't know that. I hadn't been taught that. I hadn't been shown that. And so I craved affection. I craved a relationship because I thought that would fix me. And so I remember year after year hoping to find a girlfriend, and I was the pathetic black pill chode. Now, actually, as I've said before, it wasn't that I had no attention from females. I did have attention from females, actually, at school at various times when I was at school. And in the main, I pushed those girls away because there were other girls that I preferred. So there was the really good looking girl in the science class or the English class or whatever. And inside, I was wanting to be with her. It was unrequited, but I would push away the other girls who were maybe better options for me because I was holding out for that one girl. And then when that one girl didn't reciprocate, as inevitably happened, because those girls always ended up going off with the Chad, or the bad boy, actually, more like, I created a narrative in my mind where I said to myself, well, actually, I am unworthy of love. I am too ugly. I am not attractive. I am subhuman. I am never going to receive female affection because I've been marked out as being untouchable, you know, below the baseline of human palatability. And so my life is going to be a waste because I will never have the things that other people have. I will never have a normal human life because I've been born too ugly, too untouchable, etc., etc., etc. So I bought into that whole black pill way of thinking. Now, was that inspired in part by my childhood? Yeah, probably. And also, if I'd have had a more nurturing time in my adolescence at home, then perhaps I wouldn't have fallen into that way of thinking quite as much, because I look at other people and I think they've come from quite a nurturing home background, and particularly guys who have a really amazing relationship with their mother, and their mother's always telling them how amazing they are, how handsome they are, how great they are, etc., etc. And I think that if you've had that kind of background, it must be more difficult to get as nihilistic as I got. And I didn't have that for various reasons in my childhood. So yeah, I got to a pretty dark place. But underlying it, I suppose there was this hope that actually, if I just meet that one girl, if I just meet that one person, we get together, it's all going to be beautiful. It's going to make me feel okay. It's going to make me feel whole again. You can make me whole again. You know, it's going to make me feel complete. And of course, years later, decades later, we look back and we know that that's not the case. We understand that that actually is not the reality, because a person cannot make you feel whole. A person cannot make you feel better, or at least not permanently. They can for a while, but it's a sticking plaster. It's a bandage or a Band-Aid rather than being the solution. Now, the solution really has got to be a spiritual one. The solution has got to be finding some sense of wholeness within yourself. And without risking going all Russell Brand on you now and sitting and doing a meditation session, ultimately, I think that, or at least something in that direction, is the answer. You know, and I'm in a program for people who've done too much drinking and too many drugs and all that kind of stuff. And there is a spiritual element to that. Now, am I a spiritual person? A bit. I mean, I try my best. I dip my toe into it sometimes. I dip it out of it at other times. I've been a very shallow person, actually, for a lot of my life. I've used a lot of other things to get in the way of feelings, you know, very plastic, like this guy's actually, like this hater said, you know, very plastic kinds of experiences and things, very shallow relationships, buying things to make me feel better, going to places to make me feel better, all of this stuff that gets in the way. And as fun as much of that's been, and I don't regret any of it, you know, going to Ibiza hundreds of times, going to these nightclubs hundreds of times, meeting all these different girls, having these promiscuous, meaningless relationships and stuff like that. I mean, I don't regret any of it, because that is the tapestry of my life. But at the same time, has any of that really made me happy? Well, no, it hasn't. And so what is the solution? Well, as I say, the solution, I think, is some sort of spirituality. But that, of course, that doesn't mean growing a beard and, you know, going and living in a hut and live streaming about, well, whatever, you know, Trump or whatever. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean that the answer isn't to be found in the things that perhaps we think it is as a kid. But anyway, I mean, taking a step back a minute. So there was a part of me that in some way believed in the blue pill dream, I suppose, up to a point. But I had a real double think in terms of the way that I looked at it. You know, if you read 1984, he talks about being able to believe two contradictory things at the same time. And I think I had that going on as a younger man. On the one hand, I'd seen the wreckage that a marriage could devolve into. I'd seen the damage that a bad family situation could do. But on the other hand, simultaneously, I also somewhat believe the idea that just finding that one girl could make me right. And so I suppose the next the next red pilling experience that I have was when I went out and I actually started to interact with girls, and I started to have relationships, and I started to see how things could be. And I mean, the very first girlfriend that I had ended up cheating on me. I mean, I don't think it was a very long, prolonged thing. I think that I was just basically a complete simp. I had no idea what I was doing. She was actually a pretty high value girl. She was very attractive. She got a lot of attention, etc., etc. She, she, what can I say? I'm just laughing at that. Sorry. My root chakra. She, was, as I say, a girl who was quite sought after at the time. I remember she had a quite a famous pop star who was chasing after her while I was dating her or around that time, and people on the club scene in Manchester. I was a bit of a chode. I think she liked me for the novelty value. Pretty soon it started to deteriorate, and then she ended up cheating on me. And so immediately, the first relationship that I got into, the scales fell from my eyes, and I saw what somebody who briefly had appeared to be kind and quite nurturing and seemed to be really into me was capable of. Okay. But even then, it takes a few knocks to really get it, because even then you think, well, maybe that was just her. Maybe that was just this situation. And what you don't come to understand until later is that there is something of a pattern here. And I'm not saying that every woman is going to screw you over or has bad intentions or anything like that, because I think all of us have differing intentions and people are different, and I don't think there's just like, right, this is the cookie cutter thing, this is how it's always going to go. But what I came to understand over the years was that there was a certain pattern, and particularly if I acted in a certain way. Broadly speaking, if I acted in a chody way, I was more likely to get dumped or left, or something bad was going to happen to me. When I was more offhand and more of a jerk, I suppose, I was treated better. And that's a really unfortunate, very sad indictment of human nature, but that seemed to be how it turned out. And then I started to read things like Rational Mail and all the rest of it, and I saw some of the dots connecting, and I realized that this wasn't just my experience, but actually this experience was somewhat more general. This was something that was happening in other places. And so that's kind of how it happened to me. I'm going to have to shut this one off a little bit early today because I've got to go out. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it was for me. Obviously, this is a big subject. We can talk more about it, but as I say, there was an element of doublethink there, really. It was never that I was totally naive and totally blind to all of this stuff. But I think I also had this intense need for the Disneyfied version of life and relationships to be true. And for that reason, I bought into it, or at least allowed myself to go along with it for a period of time, until it was sort of kicked out of me, really, by the vicissitudes of the dating marketplace and what it's actually like out there, or what it can actually be like out there, unless you take control of the situation as much as you can. So Ben says, do you believe that men who grow up with an intact family have a more positive view of relationships? My parents are going on after 50-year anniversary. I'm still hopeful after bad experiences. Yes, probably. And a criticism that's, well, not been leveled directly at me, but a criticism that does get leveled against people who've got a somewhat more cynical outlook is, oh, they're just broken people. They've suffered, and so they assume it's like that for everybody. And I do accept that, your perception is reality. And the way that you look at things is, of course, colored by these experiences. But, we also have to look at the statistics. We also have to look at the, divorce rates and all the rest of it. And the bigger picture doesn't infuse me with confidence that I'm wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you look at the bigger picture and you talk to other people and hear all the stories and everything, it doesn't seem to me that the Disney fantasy is being played out elsewhere, and I'm just bitter because I'm not part of it, or haven't been part of it up until this point, or until recently. Pepsa says, in an odd flow of events, a close friend's girlfriend is being doxxed due to what seems like thirsty stalkers turn evil. Not sure what is a good countermeasure, but it seems COVID is boosting this type of behavior. Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of it about, isn't there? It's not good. I'm feeling a lot of pity for these haters. Lol. Winston says, as one lad said, I had the pain through these designer shades. Is that from that's from that song, isn't it? Sunglasses at Night. Rollo says, these haters can try love their mum because they aren't getting any girls. Indeed. Avoiding action. Black pill is the ultimate argument to being blue. Andrew says, to feel good, whole, a man needs to stop needing a mother figure. That is true. That is true. And I think we spend, perhaps we spend a lot of time in our lives trying to get over that need, because actually, in the end, you don't get it. You don't even get it from your mother. I mean, you do get it from your mother. That's the main person that you get it from. But like that aside, it needs to come from somewhere else. And that really ultimately is a spiritual question as opposed to a material question. My parents are 39 years together, says, what is hip hop? I think it helps give examples, hope of a good long-term relationship, but realistically today is not 40 years ago. Social media and social movements have undermined LTRs. Unfortunately, I think that's true. I think there is truth in that, unfortunately. What else have we got? C. Joel says, Troy, you think we lost something in the 90s? I feel like since the advent of internet and social media, while quality of life and convenience has gone up, life satisfaction has declined. It's an interesting topic, actually, and it's perhaps something that we could talk about more in future. I mean, kind of. I think there was something. I mean, there's just little things like back in the day. You know, you'd be at a club and you'd hear a record, and it would be a really amazing tune. And like now, you can just Spotify it. And you can what's the app called? What's that app called? You know the app. You can just find out what the tune is with an app, and then you can go on Spotify and you can listen to the tune immediately. Now, of course, that's great and it's very convenient, but there was a certain excitement back in the day when you had to go to the record shop and go, oh, mate, I've heard this really good record. It goes, Do you know that one? Do you know that one? And you're trying to. There was more mystery in those days. Now everybody's favorite singers and artists are all on Twitter or Instagram, and you've got this constant flow of stuff. Whereas before, an artist would, Shazam, thank you, Shazam, I'm talking about. Whereas before, an artist would just disappear for 6 months, and you wouldn't hear anything about them unless maybe they did an interview, but that was unusual between releases. And you think, what happened to that band? You know, what happened to that artist? And then suddenly they reappear, and there's a lot of excitement around that I think we're kind of lacking today. You know, and there was a lot more mystery. Like you couldn't find out about a place. You'd have to go. Like if there was a nightclub, you'd have to go to that nightclub and see what it was like for yourself. You know, now you can just look it up and find their Facebook page, find their Instagram, read reviews, blah, blah, blah. There's just less sort of like mystery about life and excitement about life perhaps than there was before. But, you know, the internet age has also brought many benefits as well, as we all know. So it's a tough one, really. It's a double-edged sword. Anyway, thanks, guys. Objectivism. So that's the Ayn Rand stuff, isn't it? Which I am broadly in favor of, I think. Okay, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Please do hit subscribe, give me a like, give me a comment, all of that good stuff. Help me to grow the channel. As I said, CAD Academy is still open this week. You can grab it on the link. Actually, I'll put the link in the chat. So if you want to join, please do so. And aside from that, I will be back tomorrow with some more high quality content. I'll see you guys again very soon.